Hello, everyone. Well, it is truly exhausting trying to keep up with world events, isn't it? As just about everyone on the planet has either read or heard of the Harry Potter series and uses quotes and story references from it, I thought I'd use this one. This quote that Professor Albus Dumbledore says to Harry at the end of the fourth movie after Harry has battled Voldemort in the graveyard at the end of the Triwizard Tournament. The villains have returned, and Dumbledore says to Harry, "Dark and difficult times lie ahead. Very soon we will all have to choose, each of us, between what is right and what is easy." Well, for a long time, many decades now, most of the world has chosen what is easy. And in order to save civilization, save really the world, or even taking it down to the scale of our own families, we are going to have to start choosing what is right. We are going to have to start reforming our approach. So, I have said in previous videos that I intend to help anyone who wants to listen and contribute to engage in discussions about how to do so. I will try and help us through the dark and difficult times, but I need you to participate as well. So, one of the first conversations we're going to have is about agreeing upon a new set of values. I say new because with the ever-increasing insanity of political correctness, intersectionality, and identity politics, the values we thought we had, particularly the Western world, in fact, they seem to specifically target the Western world, well, more than seem, but that should be obvious. The values that we thought we had have been scattered to the four corners, just shredded. And what we thought we had before also was not strong enough to put up a strong enough resistance to the insanity that now engulfs our world. And it has gotten really bad. Now, I'm an ecologist. I spent more than 10 years in school, before school became as bad as it is now, although I got out just before it got insane. I have not been out of school for that long, but I spent more than 10 years studying biology and geology as a foundation, also environmental science and ecology. This was my passion. This is my passion from the time I was a little kid. I remember when I was in kindergarten, first grade, from the earliest years, whenever my class would go to the school library, we would, and the little talk or little story time would be over, I would head right to the nonfiction section and just devour all the science books. I was a total nerd, and even more so than that, I was a huge nature and and other types of sciences. Actually, a little bit of everything, but I was a huge documentary nerd as a kid. Still kind of am, but don't have the time to watch as much as I used to. Plus, in college, in undergraduate, I never went to undergraduate school because schools became completely insane. So I've not been officially hired as an ecologist yet. I don't know if that hurts my claim or not, but I do want to be honest. If any place would like to hire me, I'm a truth seeker. I will try to look at the facts and see what's most practical to do. A skill that I do think is largely lacking in today's science. Which brings me to a little story I had with. I saw a cartoon, one of those little newspaper cartoons. Not that long ago, I've had trouble finding it again, looking for it online, but so there's two panels, a scientist on each side, and almost the same image, but one with 18th century scientific technology and one with 20th century or 21st century. And the 18th century scientist says, I must, something like, I don't remember the exact words, but I remember the, about what it is. I must continue my research to truly understand nature. And the 20th century scientist says, I must make sure my results fit what I want them to get my paper into Nature. And what's tragically hilarious about that, I know that's an oxymoron, but what's tragically hilarious about that, at the same time not that funny, is I do see science very much becoming that, or having become that for some time, but ever since I was a kid, intending to go into it for the truth-seeking, for to be a preserver of the world. That was very important to me growing up. It does come off as a huge betrayal to me. I know the scientific world doesn't really care about me individually, but that is a betrayal. And so what I have decided one of my missions is to resurrect the true purpose and the true role of science, to be a truth seeker, to be a mechanism for truth seeking, to bring back reason and evidence, and not just what you want to be true, which way too many people go for today. So one of the very basal things that's been very hard, very devastatingly hit and ripped to pieces by the playing out of politics going ever more insane, particularly identity politics, in the past few years. It really surprised me just how bad things got, and this, even though there were a lot of precursors in the past decades to what's going on now in both national and international stages, it really picked up in the last few years. But one of the very basal things that's been very devastatingly hit is basic understanding of human nature and standards and understandings for basic human interaction, and particularly interaction between the sexes, the genders. We are going to have to come up with a whole new system for that, because that is just in shreds now. One of the ways to start is to start at the beginning. So let's do that. So modern humans go back about 200,000 to 300,000 years. The exact date, it used to be estimated at 200,000 based on anatomically modern human fossils. There have been some older ones found. It's pushed back to maybe about 300,000. Still less than 500,000 anatomically modern human species. Of course, we have human-like ancestors, ancestral species going back a few million years. I believe the estimate for when we diverged from chimpanzees, when the first distinct ancestral to humans apes, the Australopithecines, first appeared in the fossil record was between 5 and 6 or 5 and 7 million years ago. So one of the very basal things that's been very hard, very devastatingly hit and ripped to pieces by the playing out of politics going ever more insane, particularly identity politics, in the past few years. It really surprised me just how bad things got, and this, even though there were a lot of precursors in the past decades to what's going on now in both national and international stages, it really picked up in the last few years. But one of the very basal things that's been very devastatingly hit is basic understanding of human nature and standards and understandings for basic human interaction, and particularly interaction between the sexes, the genders. We are going to have to come up with a whole new system for that, because that is just in shreds now. One of the ways to start is to start at the beginning. So let's do that. So modern humans go back about 200,000 to 300,000 years. The exact date, it used to be estimated at 200,000 based on anatomically modern human fossils. There have been some older ones found. It's pushed back to maybe about 300,000. Still less than 500,000 anatomically modern human species. Of course, we have human-like ancestors, ancestral species going back a few million years. I believe the estimate for when we diverged from chimpanzees, when the first distinct ancestral to humans apes, the Australopithecines, first appeared in the fossil record was between 5 and 6 or 5 and 7 million years ago. It's always funny, which is not very long at all in terms of geologic time. It's always funny when I've heard this from a number of people. I heard this from classmates in high school. I've heard this from people who attend the Geological Society that I'm a part of. Meetings about once every month. Tend not to meet so much in the summer, but in the fall we'll meet again. In fact, I'm giving a presentation in November, which I will try to film or put on or upload if I can't directly show a clip of the presentation on tectonic activity, volcanoes, and supervolcanoes. But I've heard this from people in that Geological Society, that the Pleistocene ice ages came right after the end of the dinosaurs. No, you're in between the KT boundary, the end Cretaceous asteroid impact, and the beginning of the last ice ages, the last cycle of ice ages. The ice ages, actually, there were a number of times the glaciers advanced and retreated. Each advent is called a glacial maximum, and retreat is called a glacial minimum. We would be in a glacial minimum right now, except global warming may see the end of that cycle of ice ages. I'm still iffy on how much of an impact global warming itself is having. Again, what really scares me even more than rising temperatures, I've said this in previous videos, is the drying, the aridification of the land all over the world, and we've had a very serious drought year all over the planet. And now South Africa has fully committed to its country's destruction due to nothing more than insane black against white racism. Yeah. And I will do one of my next videos on South Africa. I'm writing the script right now, but you should really watch Lauren Souther's documentary Farmlands. But getting back to getting back to the time between the end of the Mesozoic and the beginning of the last ice ages, 63 million years in between those. So it's not the ice age right after the dinosaurs. No, there's 63 million years. Because the end of the Cretaceous was about 65 million years ago, and it's only 2 million years ago that the cycle of glacial maximums and minimums, which we call the Ice Age, it was a series of ice ages, but that only started around 2 million years ago and ended about 10,000 years ago last. And 2 million years ago, when the glaciers began to first advance, coincided with it was several things going on with the planet, but one of the factors was the encircling the migration of Antarctica to the bottom of the world, the cold polar currents completely circumnavigating Antarctica, which cooled a lot of the oceans. A lot of the whales began to adopt the migrations towards the polar regions, Antarctica and the Arctic. A lot of the largest whales and a lot of populations of orcas, of killer whales, now live around that area. That began with the final freezing of Antarctica around this time, and the migration of the large whales had a lot to deal with, was a primary factor in the disappearance of Megalodon's prey, leading to the extinction of Megalodon. And yes, I did go see the Meg. I was originally not going to, but some of the paleontologists in that I work with were going. We're actually hosting, bringing a bunch of Megalodon teeth to show at this theater downtown near where I live. And so I thought I'd join them. It's a fun movie. It's a fun movie. I mentioned I will give a full review, actually in about a week now. I just want more people to have the chance to go see it. Last Friday I took my younger brother to see it, so I've now seen it twice. It's most epic the first time. So, and in the review and discussion video I will make, I will talk a lot about what inconsistencies and problems there are, along with what I did like about the movie. Paleontologists and I had a lot of fun talking about it afterwards. But this was originally about human evolution, wasn't it? Instant you get me talking about prehistoric creatures, I go off on those kind of tangents. So you have to be careful when you start me talking about prehistoric creatures and evolutionary history, because I can go on forever. I promise I won't, but I can. So back to human evolution. So modern humans, the Homo sapiens species, first appeared between 200,000 and 300,000 years ago. And you look at after the post-Australopithecines, after the divergence from chimpanzees through the Australopithecus lineage, then the Homo lineage, human ancestor, and eventually modern human brain size increases a lot. Now, there are two large factors in that coming to be. One was the adoption of meat. into the diet, and perhaps the invention, perhaps the beginnings of cooking. Now, I don't exactly know where that started, but meat is brain food. Fish is often called brain food. Fish is often nutritionally separated, in the food pyramid, separated from, well, no, it is classified with meats. Meat, fish, poultry, all high in protein brain food. And the other factor, the other dietary factor, was fruits. Fruits are very high in sugar, and think of the character L from Death Note, who's an awesome character in Death Note. It's an awesome anime, by the way. But he's always snacking on sweets, on very high sugar, high energy foods. Because they're high energy, he says, either in the anime or the manga itself, maybe both. It's been some time since I watched, but he says that large brain is the most calorie consuming organ in the human body. A constantly active brain, and that is true. See, you want the meat you want the meat and fish and eggs for growing your large brain, and lots of sugar for, well, lots is kind of subjective, but a good amount of sugar for growing a huge brain. In fact, children having sugary snacks is not all bad, because that will feed their growing brains. It's just you still want to kind of limit it. Not that I've always been great at that myself, but still, you want to try to limit it. But no sugar is actually a bad idea, and this is why. Humans, because of their large brains, and particularly human children as they're developing, are energy gluttons, both in terms of food and in terms of other resources. Humans are just high level energy consumers. Now, there are ways to manage that, but that requires actually a large brain and a high intelligence in itself, which is another thing today that is tragically becoming more and more ignored and undervalued. And along with a high IQ, in general, we say that we value it, but to build up a high IQ, even if you start with, even if you come from a genetically high IQ family, when you're a child, to develop intelligence, to develop a high IQ, takes a long process of learning, which we know, but it takes trial and error. It takes making mistakes and learning from them, which a lot of people are not very good at. And it takes conversation, it takes debate, which is really the thing that's fast being lost. Everyone's so offended by every little thing all over the place that it's insanely hard to actually sit down and have a debate without someone being triggered, which, by the way, is something that's only been heard of in the past couple of years. Literally in, certainly at the turn of the millennium, maybe even as recently as 2010, never heard the word triggered. So anyone who says that that's been a thing for decades, no, not to that degree. I had never heard that term before the last couple of years. And there is at some point going to have to be an end to that. You're not going to be able, I don't mean if you're specifically watching this, I mean anyone, Any human being is not going to be able to function in the world if they're flinching at the slightest counterpoint or the slightest little challenge to their worldview. It just wouldn't work. I mean, imagine how long we would have survived as prehistoric humans if we had flinched and hit ourselves away every time there was a little rustle in the grass or a little growl in the night. There's no way. There's no way that would have been sustainable, let alone sustainable and survivable. Okay, so let's see, where were we? Well, actually this video is lasting quite long. It's almost been a half hour already. So what I'm going to do is make a part 2 to this discussion. So I will see you there.